Hey everyone, and welcome to another deep dive. Today we're looking at what it takes to be a food production operator, which I have a feeling is a much bigger deal than most people realize.
Oh, absolutely.
We've got a really interesting career guide here, some tips for job interviews, and even some information on this AI platform, RoleCatcher, that's supposed to help you find a job.
Yeah, it's really interesting how technology is changing the job market these days.
Right. So to give us a little context for this deep dive, I think it's important to remember that food production isn't just about making food. It's about making sure that food is safe and high quality.
Exactly. And that's a huge responsibility, especially when you consider that it's a global industry. Food production operators are the ones on the front lines making sure that what we eat meets all the necessary safety and quality standards.
It's more involved than I think most people realize. It's
Yeah.
not just, stirring a big pot of soup.
Right.
We're talking about operating machinery, packaging products, monitoring production lines.
And speaking of production lines, automation is becoming more and more common in the industry. I recently read that some companies are even using AI-powered vision systems for quality control now.
Wow. So instead of having a person there checking each product, it's all done by AI.
Yep.
Wow. So how does that affect the role of a food production operator?
Well, it's changing. Instead of just doing manual inspections, they might be the ones analyzing the data from these AI systems.
So it's becoming a more technical role.
Yeah, you could say that. A food production operator today needs to be comfortable with technology and data, and they need to have some problem-solving skills too.
I see, that makes sense. The career guide mentions something called HATCCP compliance, which honestly sounds pretty technical.
It is.
Okay.
HACCP stands for Hazard Analysis and Critical Control Points, and it's basically a system for finding and preventing anything that could be dangerous in food production. Operators need to know the HACCP principles really well so they can be sure that the food they're handling is safe.
So they're kind of like food safety detectives.
Exactly. They have to
No.
follow strict procedures, keep detailed records, and make sure that everything meets those critical control points.
Wow. I can only imagine how important attention to detail must be for a job like this.
Absolutely. Even what might seem like a small detail, like making sure a packaging machine is calibrated to the exact right weight, can make a big difference when you're trying to maintain quality and safety.
Right. So we've established that this is definitely a hands-on job with a lot of responsibility, and
That's
that it's
right.
becoming even more technical as automation becomes more common.
Mm.
But what about day-to-day life on the job? What's it actually like to be a food production operator? This career guide actually gives a pretty good picture of that.
It can be demanding, that's for sure. You're often working long hours, you're on your feet a lot, and you might be working in hot or cold environments. It's not the right environment for everyone, but some people are really drawn to fast-paced, dynamic work like that.
Yeah, I can definitely see the appeal in that. But I know the career guide also talked about some of the downsides to this kind of work. What are some of those?
Well, like any job, being a food production operator has its pros and cons. But on the plus side, the job stability is a major plus. I mean, people always got to eat, right?
That's
So this is not an industry that's going away anytime soon.
right. It's not like it's going to be outsourced or automated out of existence.
Exactly.
Yeah. Okay, so that's a good point. So good job security. What else?
Well, there's also the potential for growth. The career guide actually outlines different career stages for food production operators, from entry level all the way up to like a senior operator.
Oh, interesting. So you can really move up in this field. What are some of those stages?
Sure. So at the entry level, it's all about mastering the fundamentals, kind of like learning the ropes.
Yeah.
You might start out focused on one particular task, like running a packaging machine or something.
So you learn how to calibrate the machine, make sure it's running right, make sure each package gets filled to the right amount.
Exactly. And then as you gain more experience, you might move into a junior operator role. You might be responsible for a whole section of the production line at that point, overseeing a small team, making sure everything runs smoothly.
Okay, so you get more responsibility, maybe some leadership opportunities open up.
Exactly. And from there, you could become an experienced operator, maybe even leading a whole team of people, managing the production schedules, things like that.
Wow, that's a big jump from like running that one packaging machine.
Right. But it just shows you there's a potential career path here. And then at the very top is the senior operator position. That's where you're responsible for the efficiency and the overall strategy of the entire production process.
Yeah.
So those senior operators, they're the ones making the big decisions, looking for ways to, optimize production, maybe even deciding to bring in some new technologies and things like that.
Speaking of new technology, you mentioned that AI is being used for quality control now. I'm curious how else automation might affect food production operators in the coming years.
That's a great question. As automation becomes more and more common, it's true that some tasks might be done by machines, but that doesn't mean those jobs are going to disappear necessarily. It's more likely that the nature of the job will change.
So instead of a person physically doing that task, they'll be supervising the machines that do it,
Exactly.
making sure everything's running the way it's supposed to.
Exactly. And that's where continuous learning becomes really important. The career guide actually stresses how important it is to stay up to date on all the latest trends in the industry. They even recommend things like workshops or online courses.
Sure, it's like any field where things are changing quickly.
Yeah.
You have to be willing to adapt and learn new skills if you want to stay on top of your game.
Absolutely. And that actually brings us to another really important part of landing one of these jobs, the interview.
Oh, right. You got to make a good impression. And we've got that information from RoleCatcher, this AI platform. That actually sounds like it could be super helpful for anyone who's job hunting.
Yeah.
Yeah, so tell me, what exactly makes this RoleCatcher platform so special?
Well, from what I gathered, reading through the Streamline Your Job Search and your competitive edge documents you shared, it sounds like RoleCatcher uses AI to give job seekers an edge in the whole process.
Interesting.
For example, it can analyze job descriptions to help you tailor your application and even predict what questions you might be asked in an interview.
Wow, that's pretty amazing. Almost like having a secret weapon.
Right.
So were there any specific tips from RoleCatcher or even this career guide that stood out to you?
Absolutely. The career guide had a whole section on interview questions, and they really emphasized the importance of thinking beyond just your skills.
Okay.
Like, be ready to explain how you've ensured quality in your past jobs, even if they were totally unrelated to food production.
Oh, I see. So even if you're coming from a different field, you can still highlight those transferable skills.
Exactly. That maybe you were a cashier who took extra care to count the change back correctly every single time. Or maybe you were a teacher who had to manage a classroom full of kids.
Yeah.
Those experiences show that you're organized and a good problem solver.
It's all about showing the interviewer how your past experiences have prepared you for this role, even if they don't seem directly related at first.
Right. And another thing they emphasized was to show your enthusiasm. They said employers want to see that you're passionate about food and that you're genuinely interested in the industry.
That makes sense. So just to kind of recap everything we've talked about today, it seems like becoming a food production operator is about way more than just working with food.
It is.
It's about safety, quality, machinery, problem solving, attention to detail.
And it's a field that's constantly evolving, especially with all the new automation technology.
Yeah, and that actually brings me to my final thought.
Huh.
We've talked a lot about how AI and automation are changing things, but what about the human element? Do you think robots will ever completely replace food production operators? Or are there certain human skills that will become even more important in the future of food production?
That's a great question. I think it's something worth considering if you're thinking about a career in this field. What skills are going to be most valuable in the future? How can you set yourself apart in a world where technology plays such a huge role?
Yeah, it's definitely something to think about. Well, that's about all the time we have for today's deep dive. Hopefully this has given you a better idea of what it's like to work as a food production operator, the challenges, the rewards, and everything in between.
Right. It's important to do your research, understand your own strengths and weaknesses, and really think about whether or not this is the right career path for you.
I think that's great advice. So to our listener, thanks for joining us for this deep dive. We encourage you to check out the career guides and that RoleCatcher platform if you want to learn more. And if you do decide to pursue a career as a food production operator, we wish you all the best.